"It's the middle of the night," growled the old man. "What is it you want?" "Please, we need a doctor," Muddy told him. "My son, he is very sick. Please." Then from farther inside the house came another voice, a woman's voice. "Who is it, Hans? Is it more of them? Let them in." The door opened wider, and we saw then a lady in a dressing gown coming down a huge, wide staircase and then hurrying towards us across the hallway. "She says they need a doctor, Countess," the old man said. They were both peering at us now from behind the lamplight. "We are from Dresden," Muddy told them. "Am I seeing things?" the lady asked, "or is that an elephant?" "I can explain about that later," Muddy replied, "but my son is ill, seriously ill, and I have to find a doctor. Please, it's urgent." The lady did not hesitate. She took Muddy by the arm and led her into the hallway. Come in," she said. "I shall send for a doctor from the village right away. And Hans, you will find a place for that animal in the stables." I had no idea that night who these people were, and neither did I care. We would soon have a doctor for Carly, and we had found a shelter for him, too. That was all that mattered. And it would be warm, too. I could even smell food. But I did not get to go in right away. Muddy asked me to take care of Marlene and to make sure that she had something to eat and drink. So, led by Hans, the old man in the nightcap, who muttered angrily to himself the whole time, I took her round the side of the house, through a great archway, and into a stable yard. I saw to it that she had all she needed, hay and water both, and left her to it. She seemed quite happy, happier certainly than the horses across the yard from her, who were becoming increasingly unsettled at the appearance of this strange intruder. As we walked back towards the house, the place seemed immense to me, more like a castle than a house. Hans was grumbling on, but less to himself and rather more to me, about how he could never get a good night's sleep any more, how it was bad enough that the Countess had opened her doors to all and sundry, that now she was turning the stable yard into a zoo. It was all too much, he said, too much. It was not until he was leading me back into the house and up the grand staircase that I began to see for myself what he was complaining about. Everywhere I looked, every centimeter of floor space was occupied. People were lying fast asleep in the corridors, on the landings, and I presumed in every room. And those that were not asleep were sitting there in straw-filled sacks, looking up at me blankly as I passed by. There was bewilderment on every face I saw. Hans took me up to the top of the house, to the attic, where I saw Carly laying stretched out on a mattress by a fire, with Muddy kneeling over him, bathing his forehead. Peter was busy piling more wood on the fire. "He has a fever, Elizabeth," Muddy said, looking up at me, her eyes full of tears. "He's burning up. Where is that doctor? Where is he?" For the rest of the night, Carly lay there tossing and turning, sometimes delirious, and all three of us took turns trying to cool him. None of us slept. We just sat there watching him, hoping the fever would leave him, longing for the doctor to come. When he did come at long last, the lady came with him, dressed now rather grandly and all in black. The doctor examined him and said that Carly should be kept warm at all costs, and that the more water we could get him to drink, the better. The doctor gave us some medicine for Carly and told us that on no account was he to go out in the cold or travel until he was completely well again. Was only now, once he had gone, that the lady in black introduced herself. "Everyone just calls me Countess," she said, shaking each of us rather formally by the hand. "We don't bother much with names here. It's safer that way. I think we have about 70 refugees now in the house, all sorts, mostly families from the East, resting up for a few days. Everyone is passing through. It seems as if the whole world is in flight. We have soldiers on their way home on leave or returning to their regiments on the front, some deserters, no doubt, and we have some vagrants, too. I ask no questions. We have a hot meal only once a day, at midday, and then soup and bread in the evening. It's not much, but it's the best we can manage, I'm afraid. As you know, food is becoming very scarce everywhere now. You may stay as long as you like, certainly until the young boy is better, but I would advise you not to stay on much longer than that. The Russians are not so far away now, maybe a few weeks, no more. The Americans are closer by all accounts, but who knows who will get here first." Muddy thanked her from the bottom of her heart for all of her kindness towards us. "Having said I asked no questions," the Countess went on with a smile, "I have to say I am rather curious about the elephant." As Muddy told her story about working in the zoo and Pappy being away fighting in Russia, and about our escape with Marlene from Dresden, the Countess listened intently. Then she said, "I too had a husband in the army once, but he is dead now, and like you I also have a son. Like your husband, he is fighting the Russians in the East. Maybe they know one another. You never know." She was looking very directly at Peter now. "My son is just about your age, I think," she said, and he has brown eyes, deep set like yours. It is my greatest wish to see him again, alive and well. We can only hope." We stayed on with the Countess for several days. It took Carly 3 or 4 of those days to recover. Peter gave him the compass to look after, and that made Carly so happy. He would go to sleep clutching it in his fist. I remember he told Peter once that it was better than any teddy bear, and he said afterwards, when he was well again, that he was sure that it was Peter's compass that had made him better in the end and not the doctor's medicine. Muddy did not want to risk setting out again on our travels until she was quite sure that Carly was strong enough. The trouble was, the longer we stayed and the more comfortable we became, the more we did not want to leave. We would sit down at midday with all the other refugees in the great dining hall and eat good hot food. It was the Countess who was responsible for creating a feeling of great fellowship among us. She made us all so welcome. She took time and trouble with everyone. She was generous, too, and thoughtful. When Carly told her he was good at juggling one day, she gave him 2 tennis balls. If he was happy, it would help him get better, she said. As the Countess had told us, all sorts of people were there, coming and going, and everyone had a story to tell, and, as it turned out, a song to sing as well. There was a group of 20 or so school children that arrived just a day or so after we did. These were the children we got to know best, and of course that was because of Marlene and Carly too. Once Carly told them, and naturally he wasted no time in doing this, that we had an elephant living in our garden back home, that we had brought her with us, that she was living out in the stable yard right now. We could not keep them away. With Carly getting stronger every day now, it was impossible to keep him inside for long. Muddy tried to make him stay on his mattress up in the attic, but he was forever going missing. We always knew where to find him, of course. He would be down there with Marlene, both of them surrounded by a large audience of admirers. The school children were utterly amazed by the elephant, and they loved to watch Carly doing his juggling tricks too. But what they loved best of all was when Carly decided he would perform his juggling act high up there astride Marlene's neck. And that was how Carly, quite unintentionally, landed us all in very great danger. One afternoon, I came into the stable yard with Peter and Muddy looking for Carly, who had disappeared yet again. We saw him sitting up there on Marlene, juggling away. There was a whole crowd around him. Hans, the Countess's manservant, was there, and 40, maybe 50 of our fellow refugees and the school children. And Carly was showing off even more than usual. As he juggled, he was telling everyone about how he had ridden Marlene all the way from Dresden. I shall never know what made him do it, but suddenly he just stopped his juggling, plunged his hand into his pocket, and held up the compass. "You know what this is?" he said proudly. "This is my big brother Peter's magic compass. He just follows it where the arrow points, and we follow him. It's how we got here. Simple." "Juggle with it," one of the school children called out. "I bet you cannot do it with 3. Then they were all clamoring for him to dare to do it. "Go on, Carly, go on." I shouted at him not to, but I even knew then that it was of no use, that he would be unable to resist the temptation to show off even more. I pushed my way through the crowd to try to stop him, but I was too late. He was already juggling by the time I got there, with the 2 balls and the compass. For a while it looked fine. He was juggling brilliantly. I had seen him juggling as many as 4 balls before, many a time, and he had hardly ever dropped one. I am sure it was because of all of the hullabaloo the crowd was making that Marlene was becoming a little unsettled. She was wafting her ears and swaying from side to side, a sure sign she was agitated. Then she lifted her trunk and shifted forward suddenly, throwing Carly off balance. I saw the compass flying high into the air. I dashed forward to try to catch it. I think I knew it was hopeless, that it was way out of my reach, but there was no way I could make it. I tripped, then, and fell heavily. When I looked up, I saw that Hans had caught the compass and was holding it in his cupped hands. I was just relieved it was not broken. The children were all clapping and cheering. I had noticed before that Hans never smiled, and he was not smiling now either, despite all the applause. He was turning the compass over in his hands, examining it carefully. He flicked it open, then looked up at Carly. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. "It is not German. This looks to me like a British compass or American. A German compass would have O for Ost, and this has E. Ost in English is east, and there is English writing on it too. Where did you get it?" A sudden silence had descended on the stable yard. Carly, for once, had nothing to say. His eyes met mine. He was begging for help, but I couldn't think of anything to say either. "I asked you where you got it from," Hans said again. "From me." It was Muddy's voice from behind me. She had Peter with her as she came through the crowd towards me. She put her arm around my shoulder. My husband gave it to me, a gift. He is fighting the Russians now, but at the beginning of the war he was in France in Normandy. He told me he got it off a British pilot who had been shot down. It was his, and now it is mine, she said. I admired her so much at that moment. I knew she was brave, but had no idea she could be this inventive. Hans hesitated for a long time. I could see he had his doubts, that he was still not sure he believed her. Thank you, Muddy went on, for catching it, I mean. I would hate to have seen it lying there smashed on the ground. It was the last gift I had from my husband. It has brought us all the way from Dresden, you know, so for lots of reasons. You can see it is very precious to me, to my whole family. Thank you. Hans seemed more satisfied now. He thought for a while, then nodded slowly, before handing it over to her at last. It's not a toy, he said. I do not think little children should be playing with such a thing. I quite agree, Muddy replied, with a shrug and a smile. But you know how children are. Don't you worry. I will see to it that he does not do it again, I promise you. She looked up at Carly. She did not have to pretend to be angry with him. Carly knew it. He was looking quite shamefaced and sheepish. Carly, will you get down off that elephant this minute and come with me? Peter went to help him down, and once we had seen Marlene safely back in her stable, we all walked away. But I could feel Hans's eyes on us all the time. After supper that same evening, the Countess got up and clapped her hands to quiet everyone down. What many of you do not know, she began, is that the school children we have with us are from a chapel choir in Dresden. I have asked them if they would sing something for us. In these terrible times, I think it's only music that can bring us some joy and peace of mind. Only last Christmas, they told me they sang the Christmas Oratorio by Johann Sebastian Bach, who is for me the greatest German who ever lived. They have very kindly agreed to sing some of it for us now. As they were singing, I found I could lose myself completely in the music, that I could forget all the dreadful things that were going on in the world. I felt cocooned in this heavenly music. It seemed to warm me all through. It was a glow that lingered long after the singing had finished. I was still hearing it again in my head when we were back upstairs in our attic room that night, huddled under our blankets. The music had affected us just as deeply, I think. We could talk about nothing else. Even Muddy had stopped being angry with Carly about the compass incident. I only wish Pappy could have been here with us to hear his beloved Bach, she said. He would have loved it so much. We were almost asleep when the door opened and the light of a lantern danced into the room. It was the Countess. She crouched down to speak to us, talking in a hushed voice. I'm afraid there is trouble, she said. Hans is a good man. He has been with me for over 40 years now. He was in the last war and is a loyal German, as I am. But he and we have different loyalties, different ideas. I have learned that he intends to go to the police about the compass. Yes, he has told me everything that happened. I tried to persuade him not to, but he insisted that it is his patriotic duty. I'm afraid he did not believe your story, and I have to say neither do I. But I have another reason to doubt you. Your son, she was looking at Peter directly now. How you speak, this has been troubling me for quite a while now. When you talk, you sound to me like an American. You see, I have relatives in America, and when they speak German, they speak just like you. My American nephew would have been about your age. It's so sad, so ironic, so stupid. He's my sister's son, half American, half German. He joined the American army and now lies dead in Normandy, killed by a German bullet. She turned to Muddy. There's something else I do not quite believe about this son of yours. I hear that he has asthma and that's why he's been excused military service, but I've been watching him and I've seen no sign of this asthma. In fact, he looks to me to be as strong as an ox. Hans believes he may be an enemy pilot, a bomber pilot, and I think he may be right. If he is and you are caught, then we all know what will happen, not to just him, but to you also, all of you. I would not want to see that happen. Muddy tried to interrupt, but the Countess would not let her. I think it's best that you should leave and right away. You will have your reasons for doing what you are doing, and I'm sure they are good reasons, but I don't want to know them. The less I know, the better. Your little boy looks to me as if he's quite well enough to travel now. Once Hans has alerted the police, they will not take long to get here. That is for sure. So I think you should go tonight, now, before it's too late. I shall, of course, tell the police that I am sure Hans' suspicions are quite groundless. But when you go, if you do not mind, I should like you to do something for me, something that's very important. I want you to take those children with you, the choir. They have no one to look after them anymore. Their choir master was killed, and several of the children, too, on their way here. I want you to let them travel with you, to look after them. Would you do that? I know it's a lot to ask, but I've seen how much they love that elephant of yours. They will go willingly with you. They will go where she goes. I cannot keep them here forever. I should like to, but I just don't have the room. As you can see, I'm overcrowded as it is, and more come every day. I will give you enough food for you and for them to get you on your way. She spoke in English now to Peter and looking him in the eye. Tell me the truth, young man. Am I right? Are you what I think you are? American. Canadian, Peter replied. RAF. I was close enough then, she said in German again. The war is coming to an end very soon. I think the Americans must be very close now. It will all be over, but too late for my husband, sadly. And since I know your truth, I will tell you mine. A few months ago, my husband took part in a plot to assassinate Hitler. My husband was a good German, a good officer who believed we had been led down the wrong road, a terrible road into this war, and he just wanted it to stop. The only way to do it, he thought, was to kill Hitler. So he and his friends tried to do it, tried to end the suffering. They failed, and he died for what he believed in. I believe what he believed, that the suffering must end. This is why I'm doing what I do now. This is why your secret will be my secret. So gather your things and come downstairs, but hurry. I have assembled the children and have given each of them enough food for a few days. It's all I can spare. Be quick now. The farther you are gone from here before dawn, the better. She left us then, before Muddy or any of us could say a word of thanks. We dressed quickly, gathered our things, and made our way downstairs. The children were all waiting in the hall, the Countess too. We were saying our goodbyes when the front door opened and Hans came in. He was not alone. He had an army officer with him and several soldiers, their rifles pointing right at us.